Hey everyone, welcome into the ADN studio where we bring you a brand new episode called American Roundball, where we talk women's hoops each week here on the American Digital Network. I'm now joined here in the studio by college basketball analyst Monica McNutt. Monica, great to have you here on the show. Excited to get this women's hoops talk going every single week here with you in the studio. How great has the basketball season been so far?
It has been incredible, Hali. I am thoroughly enjoying not just what we have happening in the American, but just women's basketball across the board. I love the rise that we're seeing in terms of the interest and the fandom around women's hoops.
Well, a team that has quite a bit of potential this season is USF. They're officially locked into that second place spot in the American standings and are back in the national polls. Monica, what have the Bulls been doing so well this season?
Well, ironically enough, Hali, to me, it's been defense. You look at their last time out when they played UCF, the Knights. They held them to 25% from the field in that first half, and on the game, they were only 34%. In addition to holding UCF to one of their lowest point totals of the season at 45, the Bulls were also able to force them into turnovers. There were 15 turnovers. Now, granted, the Bulls sort of have a high-risk, high-reward system in that they had 17 turnovers of their own, but they had 15 assists to go with those 17 turnovers, while they kept the Knights, stifled at 15 turnovers and just 5 assists. So to me, what they're doing defensively is just as impressive as what we're seeing from their outstanding guard, Kitty Alaska, and the other gang.
Well, Monica, we were fortunate enough to have her joining our coverage back at Basketball Media Day. Seems like that was just yesterday, and here we are in January. But Monica, you had a chance to talk to every single head coach and some of the players at Media Day. Who was a team rather that was maybe flying under the radar a little bit that you had high hopes of watching here this season?
I thought Houston could be that team this year, Hali. When you look at what Coach Ron Huey and his group was able to do last year, not a ton of, impressive stats there, but they return some players who can just flat out fill it up. When you look at Sarithia Hawkins and you think of Jasmine Harris, what she's able to do with the basketball, I don't know that this team is going to surprise anyone at this point. They're sort of lumped in that middle of the pack in the American right now with that 3-2 record. But you look at what they've been able to do, and they've been able to protect their home court this season. The 2 losses that they do have at home came at the hands of UConn in that very, very close finish to Cincinnati. But their schedule seems to be throwing them some favors. You look at the 3 out of their next 5 will be at home, where they seem to play very well. So I'm curious to see where this team will be by the first week of February in terms of the next 5 games. Really could put them into a good position. Now, I will say this. Over those 5, we're going to be keeping an eye on Tulane. They will have an opportunity to host the Green Wave. They needed OT when they were in Louisiana to top the Green Wave. They got down 21 points before Jasmine Harris and Sarithia Hawkins just went off, both pouring in double-doubles. So we'll see how that goes. That's the one I'm sort of circling over the next 5. But if they protect their home court, they're in a good position to be right behind UCF in the standings, or to stay there and separate themselves a little bit from the middle of the pack.
Well, certainly a very impressive turnaround for the Houston program under head coach Ron Huey. And the Cougs actually getting some love, getting some votes in those national polls this week. So they're trending in the right direction. But a team that is having no trouble here in conference play so far. A very talented group, obviously. The UConn Huskies ranked #1 here all season long. But we actually got to witness a very interesting non-conference game earlier this week. The Huskies hit the road to take on Texas, won that one 75-71. Very good win for UConn. What did we learn about the Huskies in that game?
Well, I think the word that comes to mind, Hali, is grit. So often we're so accustomed to seeing UConn be the UConn that we know, that doesn't struggle with teams and is beating teams by a margin of 30-plus points. So when you see them in a position where they're in a bit of a dogfight, you heard the commentators, Rebecca and Kara did a fantastic job, but you hear this narrative about unfamiliar territory and how will the Huskies respond? Well, for me, they checked it off this season. I don't think we'll hear that anymore. And it probably dates back to last season and that loss to Mississippi State. And you remember Media Day, Hali. Everybody, of course, was asking them about the Mississippi State loss, but it's behind them. And on so many levels, there's a weight off their back, as we heard Gino allude to. But for this season, the challenge for this season, it's also been checked off, And so we saw them respond. Nafisia Collier didn't have her best game. We saw Katie Lou Samuelson miss some huge free throws down the stretch. But for me, someone who I found impressive was Crystal Dangerfield, who I thought just had a knack for making the right play at the right time. I think about that steal off the inbounds late into the contest. maybe her plays didn't necessarily translate into buckets immediately, but they were energy plays. They were, come on, y'all, we're the UConn Huskies. Let's go. Let's get into this. So I think that even for us as fans, when you're accustomed to people winning and playing at a high level, there is some truth to the fact that these are unfamiliar positions. But we saw UConn answer the call and ultimately pull out a win. And I don't care if it's 100 or 1 point. A win is a win.
Well, certainly a team effort by the Huskies, each player contributing, as you mentioned, in their own way. But when you look at the league as a whole, who is a player to watch in the American?
Well, I'm going to keep an eye on Rangy Brassard. There are so many players to watch, but I think for Brassard, coming off of a Player of the Week nod, when you're competing with the UConn Huskies, anytime you can snatch that award from a Husky, I think that does something for your confidence. And you remember that Coach Keitha Adams is in her first year at Wichita State. Wichita State is in their first year in the American. So we're dealing with quite a few firsts. But for Brassard, we know that she's very talented. I think she put up 21 points, 9.5 rebounds, 3 steals, and 2.5 blocks last week in terms of earning that award. I want to see if she can keep that trend going. I know Wichita State has a game this week, but I think that this is a group that, because they're still sort of new, we do our due diligence with scouting reports, but there is a familiarity that is missing that can play to their advantage as they try to sort of assert themselves into the conference standings.
Well, Wichita State, a new face in this league, but they're definitely starting to find their stride here in conference play as they meet a lot of these teams for the first time. But Monica, I guess to close out the show, what is your matchup this week that you're most looking forward to? A game for fans to circle on their calendars.
Oh, man, Haley, you got to bring this one to Memphis. USF, who is ranked 23rd in receiving votes, in the other poll, they've got to go to Memphis. We think of USF as this team that had all this bravado and was challenging UConn, and they are a fantastic squad. But I don't know if folks realize they have not been able to beat the Tigers in their home stadium since 2015. So they're going on the road this week. They're going to have to face those Tigers. Coach Melissa McFerrin does a great job with her crew. Within this team matchup, there is an individual matchup that I think will be very, very interesting to watch. When you think of Cheyenne Creighton and Maria Jesperson, they're averaging very similar numbers. I think Maria is averaging 1 more rebound at 16 and 9 as opposed to Cheyenne, who's at 16 and 8. So this could be sort of an old school battle of the bigs that we might be seeing. I think the key to this one will probably be tempo, in that the Bulls are averaging up in the mid to upper 70s in terms of points per contest, while the Tigers are still around that 60 mark. So if the Tigers can force their will in terms of tempo, I think they'll be in good shape. And of course, they've got to watch out for those 3-point shooters that the Bulls have.
All right, Monica, well, definitely a game to circle on the calendar this week. Thanks for joining us here in the studio. Great to finally talk some women's hoops as we gear up for this championship in just over a month from now.
Absolutely, Haley. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, thanks a lot to Monica, and thanks to all of you for tuning in to our first episode of American Roundball. On behalf of Monica McNutt, I'm Hali Oughton. We'll see you next Wednesday.